Good morning. Okay, so the time now is the September the 4th, 12:01 p.m. This is the Saturday morning, which is the day after the event that took place in the Countdown supermarket in Auckland. I won't say I can know completely nothing about the case. There's a few things that, it's the story of the day, so you can't really not go around it. But I've, by and large, kept myself, since I first heard about it yesterday afternoon, actually pretty ignorant to what's going on. Because what I'm trying to do with this video today is talk about some of the things which I've talked about recently, in terms of maybe things we should be thinking about in terms of this event, while without making any predictions or conspiracies. So in other words, I don't know anything more than you or anyone else knows about this. I just looked at it, and I thought, oh, that's got me thinking about some of the other things which I've talked about. So what I'm talking about is unrelated to that event in terms of don't know the facts. It just sparked off a whole bunch of thoughts in my head, and which we'll talk about today. That's in saying that's not 100% true, in the sense of why I'm making this video now is the video I made yesterday morning prior to that event in Countdown, which is where I noticed there had been an internet outage. Again, I'll put this video on a website, my website, which is the Dyslexic Detective. We'll put the word supermarket somewhere in the title, so when you're looking for it, that's where you go to look. So I'll put that screenshot of that outage there, so you can verify a stamp date that occurred prior to this event. And my comment in the video I made yesterday, prior to the event, was, I've seen this beforehand. The last time I saw this was with me commenting about what's going on when I saw a similar outage occurring in February when I was up in the Wairarapa of 2019, just prior to the March shooting, which of course became a big event that all the governments and tech firms have leapt on board, is used as a catalyst to give them more power or control over what actually happens on the internet. So that was one of the things that sort of bumped into my mind when I made the little video yesterday. What I wasn't really thinking about localized. What I was more thinking about was how there's been a lot of chatter on the internet of late. This word like black swan events, I've noticed the script into lexicon. We find out things like Palantir, which is one of the tech companies, is buying up literally gold. We're seeing that there's a lot of that going around. There's a big, protest issue down in Wanaka where Peter Thiel is, trying to build this big underground, he's trying to build this big, huge sort of property complex. What's underneath it's a totally different matter, but it's an overall awareness that people I know in council in Queenstown are aware of these tech lords, what they're doing, and they're not actually 100% happy about it too. So there's a whole lot of other issues going on in there as well, but mostly it's we're aware that these guys are coming down here, and there's been chatter and noises about another 9/11 event which would be online. So that was kind of what I was thinking. I was also thinking anniversary of 9/11 is not that far away. I was wondering about the possibility whether some form of insurgent group would be likely to carry out attacks around the world, possibly sleeper cells, that sort of thing. And again, when I note about those sort of things, is that's not like I'm going, oh my god, this is proof that there's an Islam conspiracy theory. Terrorism is a very complicated situation, which I think most of the groups that I deal with, most of the people, when it comes to terrorism, they want to put on a black hat and a white hat. But when it comes to terrorism, you've got the people that conduct the acts of terrorism, and they normally, if they're an organised or part of a wider cell, they need, there's funding to come. And once you get involved in the funding, it becomes much more difficult to really work out, who's the motivating force. It's very easy to manipulate angry people. It's much harder to identify who's the person, pulling the strings. So when I talk about the possibility of sleeper cells, there's no blame attached. I'm not pointing at anyone. I'm just commenting on how these series of attacks could unroll and some of the things that were going on in my head at that time. The other thing which occurred to me when the supermarket attack occurred was things that I said previously, was that it was only 8 weeks ago that we actually, might have been a little bit longer than that, but we had an attack in Countdown, which was also a stabbing case. And again, there was a great rush of speed to try and place that attacker with a political ideology, which didn't really take off. And one of the reasons it didn't take off in Dunedin is that, that Dunedin's not that large a place, and it's the people that kind of carry a lot of these ideas tend to be, let's say, tend to be the spreaders of these sort of information, tend to be kind of more. Well, let's just bring it back to the localized factor, and that that supermarket itself in its question. You can go 100 meters and you can go and have a beer at the L Bar, which is a cool little craft bar there on Main Street, and it wouldn't be the first or last time, way before that event took place, that people were making some dark humoured remark about the supermarket and their customer management, and basically saying it was only a matter of time before someone had enough, and some shit occurred, which obviously would have been the sort of person that does that has got mental health issues, or there's other things going on in their lives, so it's not actually racist or whatever. It's just dickheads meeting dickhead gets boom. So that never really took off in Dunedin, and because that wasn't being carried by the sort of people that are in that whole spreader of ideas, it didn't really take off anywhere else. It was sort of just allowed to kind of slip below the water again. But at the same time, you look around New Zealand, Australia, there have been incidences that have been taking place in supermarkets, and I don't think that should be particularly that surprising to people, because there's only so many places that we can actually go at the moment. So whether it's somebody just having a bit of road rage, or they turn around and they want to carry out some event, supermarket is a natural place for it to occur, because it's the only place that we can go. And from that viewpoint, it's sort of been interesting, because if you turn around and you look at what Woolworths has been saying in talks with the government in Australia prior to these events, is that they've been saying, in fact, they've been doing trialing hidden cameras and body cameras at the supermarkets, because they're worried about the increased issues that supermarket workers are likely to face as lockdowns occurred. And they were also anticipating future, what they call again these black swan events, where they were going to need enhanced security. So, these were things that were being talked about beforehand, which of course again gets to the whole issue of are agendas out there. It doesn't mean that anybody has to plan anything, but we live in a country today, for example, where there's 9 public relations experts work for every journalist out there. So it's not that hard imagination to see that when an event takes place, that if it fits what they're trying to sell, that the public relations people will pick up and use what they're good at, crafting the words and so on, to take an event which really isn't that big a deal and hype it up to fit that particular agenda. It's called the phase. There was actually a phase for it. It's called seizing opportunity from crisis, and that goes all the way back to the Crisis X the crisis management response symposium they held in Christchurch 2 weeks before the 2019 attack, which then was replicated again in 2019 with John Key involved, and people from Palo Alto, which is the company that John Key's become involved in, that have been talking about these 9/11 events and talking this up, and we're having, getting this narrative of black swan events taking place. So those are the thoughts which I'm thinking about when this event occurs. I'm also thinking that I'm thinking about the case in Australia. It was called, I think it was the Lindt chocolates, where they made out a big deal that this guy that turned around and abducted these people was an Islamic terrorist. What actually occurred when you started looking, I looked into that case a lot closely, was what was happening in Australia was that a lot of people that were arriving in Australia were coming from war zones or very traumatic environments, and they had lots of PTSD issues and so on. Instead of getting the help that they needed, what was happening was the government, ASIO guys, were stepping in, and they were actually targeting the vulnerable members of the immigration community. So, whether they were schizophrenic, or they were petty criminals, or they had family members that, they didn't cooperate, then they weren't going to be allowed to the country, or they were going to be booted out. And they basically pushed a lot of people towards the breaking edge, which then expressed itself in the form of political ideology, which is, I wouldn't be surprised to say this is what's occurred with this individual, and probably, as opposed to being treated like a criminal, I'm kind of curious, from what I do know, why he wasn't actually being evaluated and treated from that viewpoint of not his belief systems, because that's a slippery, slidey slope, but whether or not this guy actually had issues which needed some form of therapy or treatment, or the surveillance of mental health issues as opposed to police people who carry guns, which is the lesson we learned from Australia. If some of these people had actually received help earlier on, but that's also a lesson that I think is also true of the white supremacist extremists. And that there are people out there that I've seen, people like Patrick Gower and so on, again, this week did a thing about extremists in our society. Very well timed, I might say, Patrick. And the reality was they were going after people that, I know some of these people in Christchurch that have been around for decades. They might be right wing, but really at the end of the day, what they are is they're drop dead alcoholic, fucking can't get a job. A lot of them, I mean, I'm not sugarcoating it. That's what the issue is. It's, they've picked their ideology because of the rooted deep issues. And I'm sure that goes both sides, in terms of there are people within the Islamic community, from the Linwood Mosque. There are people which I've, really got to know these people and have a lot of love for them. And, they don't, I'm sure they've got people in their own mosque who think, oh God, Muhammad just needs to tell it down a wee bit, or maybe a little bit less of those few anti-racist, anti-Israel, anti-racist remarks. Those individuals within that community shouldn't reflect all of what Islam has to say, any more than you turn around and say, oh, to be in the mafia, you must be Catholic. Oh, therefore, if you're a Catholic, you must be in the mafia. That's ridiculous. The same situation people that, that might be religious. They're not going to go out there and attack Muslim people. There might be 1 in 100,000. And yet this media and this government as well, but the wider corporate media is focusing on the 1 in 100,000 individuals who, whatever their belief systems, choose to act in that way. And again, the ones that are focusing on people that aren't really terrorists in the sense of they're not part of a wider organisation. These are people that have seriously got, dysfunctional issues, that have picked an ideology which is simply an expression of that deeper dysfunctionalism. It's not a reflection of either. And we need to, what I'm basically saying is that we need to focus more on what our commonhoods are, as opposed to focusing on what our differences are, which is kind of what this media is trying to push us into this area where it's like, oh no, you're not allowed to have individual ideas, we all must be a collective. Well, how does that work exactly? So as a collective, let's be really, since we're going down that way, as a collective, we must all vaccinate for the good of the human race. But we must also all have abortions for the good of, do you see what I'm trying to say is that at one level, and I'm not again, like, please, there are some religions that are not pro-abortion. That's not the issue I'm trying to get across. But the issue I'm trying to get across is that in one argument, we've got people saying, oh no, it's the woman's right as an individual. She gets to choose that. And they're okay when it applies to abortion. But suddenly they're not okay when it comes to vaccine. Like, oh, yes, no, the government should be able to step in. You can't have it both ways. And one of the reasons why a democracy works the way it has is it works, what I don't think a lot of people appreciate is that democracies have in them their checks and balances which are there to actually make sure that, it doesn't just become, democracy doesn't just turn into one big popularity contest, that these things are designed to respect the fact that we can all be individuals, but they've also got safeguards so that we're not, impinging upon other people, and it has to be done in a certain process. And right now, it seems to be like we're being told, because of these crises occur, oh, no, trust the government, democracy, too many people on social media expressing nasty things. We need to shut that down, and only the collective. No, I think we need to actually start kind of going back a little bit and looking at, a lot of people come to New Zealand, and it comes home for many, hundreds of years, because we are actually a pretty functioning, well-functioning democratic society. We're not perfect, but overall, we do things pretty well. And we don't need to be pushed down this road towards this form of what I call, governmental extremism, which is saying, oh no, only the government, only trust the government, only trust the tech companies for the version of news. We just have to keep doing what we're doing right now, which is just going, look, you might worship a different religion, you might have different ideas, you might even vote a different person, but at the end of the day, we can sit down, we can watch a rugby game together, and as long as we've got these vehicles where we actually treat each other with respect, and, that's the sort. I put up this thing today, this post today, and I'm just going to finish up here, and which is why I sort of brought up about that thing about the abortion versus the mass vaccination, and I had two women holding hands. Obviously, the body language implied that they had a relationship of some kind, and they had a placard, and they said, "We, I love that word, we stand together." And again, big kudos to the Christchurch mosque community for the first thing they came out and said is, they were heartbroken, and we are one. They didn't turn around and say they are us. They said we are one. Notice there's a slight difference in that language. They, distancing them, actually being quite condescending. We is actually language we're actually speaking about what we can do together, how we can find these solutions together. Concentrate on the commonhoods, not the differences. So in this photo, there's two women together, and one says, "I'm vaccinated, I respect choice," and the other one said, "I'm unvaccinated, I respect choice," or we stand together with respecting choices. And some woman comes up and goes, "Oh no, that's individual. You're not thinking about the collective action," which is, become a sort of buzzword in these sort of pseudo-Marxist people that pop up. And, I love these people. They tend to be people that come from upper middle class backgrounds. Mummy and daddy have got a refrigerator that they can go and raid all the time, which they don't have a problem with doing, and yet they're running around wearing their designer equipment, using their high-rise iPhones, telling us that, no, that's individualistic, you've got to be a collective. My attitude to them is, get a big black dog up here. I'm saying, well, wait a minute, okay, so by your logic, in that case, the state of Texas was right, when they turned around and said, "No, we're making a decision for everybody because they can't be trusted. No, women aren't allowed to make decisions for their own bodies." Suddenly, the rules don't apply. So, in these cases, of course, and as I said to Mohammed Khan, who was the president of the mosque when I interviewed him after the Christchurch situation, said, beginning was this again, this sort of saccharine, sort of slimy little "they are us," it's just all fake as hell. Isn't it wonderful? We aren't, we're all getting together, talking together now. Kumbaya. And I said to Mohammed Khan, very honestly, lovely guy too. He's not the president now, which I'm a little bit disappointed about, because I had a lot of respect for Mohammed Khan. But, I said to him, because it was so important not to, I said, look, that's a bit of bullshit, really, isn't it? Because we're not actually having that conversation. And he turned around to me and said, "Well, you're right. We're not." And he acknowledged it was a conversation that we needed to have. And in this case, what we were talking about was only like we're meant to embrace Islam and go, yeah, come on in, it's fantastic. And I'm going, wait a minute, I'm not having a problem with that per se, but how do you guys then do? We do that. How do you respond to the fact that we live in a country where people actually have same-sex relationships? And some of the things that your people at your mosque have to say on their social media pages are pretty kind of insulting to people that want to have that lifestyle. So you need to address that issue within your community, and pretty much release term. He didn't say, "Oh, yes, you're completely correct," but he acknowledged that this was a point, and this is one of these things where we're going to have an honest conversation with each other and talk about these things. This is what we've got to do. We've got to acknowledge the good with the bad. That's how negotiations actually take place. You don't turn around and say, "Come on in, Kim, we won't talk about those death camps and those missiles you got there. We're just going to have a negotiation, but we won't talk about that stuff." Those, in fact, are the things that get brought up before Kim gets aid. And it's the same situation where we've got people that come and want to live in New Zealand for obvious reasons, that it's a great place to live. Well, we have to say, well, that's cool, but how are you going to fit into this model? And at the same time, we have to fit into their model, which is to acknowledge that they have a right to worship however they choose to within their community and within the comforts. And, of course, that includes making sure that community, so that if someone grows up, they understand that someone who grows up within the Islamic community might actually develop different ideas, and that there should be a vehicle in that situation that person's able to leave that community or, still have that relationship with family without being, these are all the complicated things that we've got to get into, but we've got to be honest about it. And today, there'll be 100,000 people rushing out and go, look, she's leading in terrorists. No, bullshit. One person got into the country. There were issues. That person obviously were identified issues. Why the police have stepped in and not mental services, we still have to find out. I'm not making commentary about that. I'm just saying to people, when you're talking about this stuff, try and understand that, the narrative that's going out there is to A, get us opposed to anybody that doesn't think along the line, and give the governments more power to have greater censorship, to shut down our ability to actually have conversations online and exchange information and find out things that are actually happening with corporations or government aren't the spin line. And I think that's really the issue. That's what scares them more than and these are why they leap on these things. It's in their interest to enhance the differences that we have as opposed to getting us to work together. If we all turned around and started working together and saying, looking at our commonhood, the government would be in hell because suddenly they'd have to ask questions about the state sector reform, they'd have to deal with questions about Farm Act, the way they buy drugs, they'd have to look at the TPPA. At the moment, we're not looking at any of these important issues which are going to affect your ability to how much money you're earning a week, what kind of quality of food you're going to eat. No, at the moment, we're reacting to crisis after crisis, and the only person that's making any decisions for us all, whether we're Muslim or Christian or whatever, is our government. And frankly, I'm not particularly impressed at what they're doing. I can see them actually creating problems which will actually exacerbate the conflicts and tensions, and I think they are playing on a very outdated model of what's just called right as might, when they should really be looking at end-game theory. Last thing I'll also comment on, I'll comment on at 21 minutes, try and keep it under 20. I was going to try and make it 15. Obviously, Patrick Gower turned around this week to this whole thing about extremists, obviously looking at right-wing people, but the same thing applied. Users like, this is why the government needs more laws against hate. Chris Kafafau went to ground before this occurred because when it came to asking questions about, well, how's this law going to work? What is the definition? Isn't this going to be mission creep where the government actually is then able to use this law to shut down anybody that's critical of it? Couldn't answer that, so he's went to ground. So now this will come up, and this will be one more thing which the government will try and use via that opportunity out of crisis. We need to sit back and say, no, if you're going to pass these laws, you've got to define how are you going to do this, which is going to keep us in a situation where we have a democracy and we can ask those difficult questions of each other that we need to ask if we are going to have a community that is, stable. Politics is messy, and democracy is messy. Democracy takes a lot of work, and it takes a lot of talking to each other. And if you take away the tools to do that, then you don't have stable democracy, you don't have stable society. So, it's not our interest to actually stop us from asking these awkward questions, even though sometimes they're a bit of a mission creep. These are the things that we need to be aware of. Likewise, Helen Clark this week got up, I think it might have been the same program, and they interviewed her, and, it was Helen Clark, it was about, I think it was either to do with, these are things that she's, instead of been retiring, Helen Clark is now the Privy Councillor advising the government. She's running around doing UN stuff in the background, being big negotiations. She's coming here, setting up think tanks. She's acting like someone that's actually been elected official. She's not. Helen Clark, shut the fuck up. You're no longer a member of the democratic process. Do your stuff on the side, setting up corporation foundations which talk about these big issues when that same media is not revealing who you are being financed by, is a conflict of interest. And, this is the problem. Helen Clark's turning around talking about, we're going to do these things for women, help modernise, Saudi Arabia and the Emirates, and cutting these deals with the Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, letting them give money to aid projects so that they don't actually get questioned about things like child trafficking or any other issues, or these awkward questions that we need to be having this conversation with, as part of this whole idea, we'll modernise them and bring them along into the better world. When what Jamal Khashoggi showed was that the software was used to track him down by Saudi Arabia to chop him up and assassinate him in the embassy floor, because he exposed the fact that these programs that Helen Clark was backing, and in return they're funding her Helen Clark Foundation, was actually just enabling the status quo, which again, when we look at Helen Clark at the Auckland University Technology, the groups that she's working with behind Rocket Lab, who are calling for censorship, well, I'm not surprised, because we're actually exposing your nepotism and your cronyism. And you don't get to have a say in this conversation because you're not revealing where your money's coming from. So you're as much the organised terrorist that, unlike this guy at the supermarket, who is just an individual, what I would suspect serious mental issues, that has gone off and, seriously, you're a terrorist. What do you achieve out of attacking a supermarket? September 11th, you can't think of a better fucking target? Helen Clark, on the other hand, is, the very thing that she's talking about. She is a highly mobile person, access to technology, funded by powerful organisations that actually are afraid of democracy. She's the very thing that she's talking about. And when they have her on 60 Minutes, And then they get her talking about what she thinks. And then they had the Helen Clark Foundation. So actually the story's not multiple sources. It's one story for the whole program. And then they don't reveal where the funding's from. You're kind of going, this is where you see the bigger narrative, the bigger picture is about using these tiny little events to get us in flight and fright moment. So we're all in a little bubble, and we're all not talking to each other, and we're all not getting active and reacting to this huge wave of centralisation of power, who are then using these events to actually block us from exposing them even further, and on we go. Anyway, those are all the things I was thinking about before the event happened in Christchurch. Those are why I thought about them. And so when I report on this event next time round, I will be reporting on it from having a little bit more knowledge and digging deeper. I may not actually go into that. I've got so many other stories and issues on my plate. I may just skip that one away because I think it's, it's all part of the whole getting us the, clickbaiting, basically. I may go into stories which are more importantly, but that's what I have to say about that issue today. And you're listening to the Deadline Report with Ben Vidgen on the back channel news, where we'll be shortly, which we are going to be calling the shipping news. Take care.